right. All right. Happy Sunday. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We have Liv Wheeler with us today, and Magenta, Pixie, and Tara and Chrissy are together with the sharing of the glorious wings. So how wonderful that everybody joined us today. Hopefully Nina will be able to jump in when available, but today we're going to focus on tools and the idea of separation, and going to get into some other stuff as well. So if it would be okay, everybody, please join me in connecting up into the sacred heart space. We'll just do this for 1 minute. Focus your attention on the area of the heart, imagining the breath is flowing in and out of the heart space, and breathing in a little slower and deeper than usual. 4 to 5 seconds is a great cadence, or whatever is most comfortable for you. And then please make an active intention to feel the feelings of love, compassion, and care, and radiate that to yourself and to everyone on the planet and everyone that is listening. Let's bring it back. Well, we're in it, aren't we, girls? We are in it. So in my class recently with the guides, they referred to this period of time as like the twilight time, where the old is seeking to be released, yet the new has not yet shown up for us to see. And they mentioned that our thoughts and our deeds were very, very important right now, and they have repercussions for this time period and the times to come. Because of that, I thought that we might share some tools. So I have a book here I'm going to reference to show everybody here. It's called The Complete Dictionary of Ailments and Diseases, and it's written by Jacques Martel. I'll make sure I put the link there. Why do I share that? I share that because if you have some physical challenges right now, physical manifestations, this book is a great connection to all of the emotions associated to it. So it can provide an additional tool for you to do your inner work, to find out what emotions are on board. Magenta has a book. I can't remember the name of it now. My goodness, my brain. Divine Matrix Architecture. What is it again, Magenta? The first one where you have your tools?
Masters of the Matrix is the first one, and then Divine Architecture and the Starseed template is the second one. Hello, Nina.
Hi, so sorry I couldn't get on.
Thanks for coming, Nina. We were just starting to talk about tools. So in your book, Magenta, that you just mentioned, there is a full section there which provide tools to people on how they can integrate their emotions in a healthy way. So there's that, and I wanted to talk because I know, Chrissy, you've posted a couple things about duality, right, and polarity. And the reason why that book, and this one I've just shared, Magenta's book, can help is to help integrate emotions, because duality is something that we want to get out of, the polarization. We're seeing such an incredible polarization right now. We want to get out of duality, but acceptance precedes neutrality. So we have to accept that the individual we are witnessing has chosen a path and is on their own journey, and we must not judge their journey. We have to accept that they are living their life and making their choices, and it's between them and source. It's our business, right? Of course, do no harm, but in spite of how they show up, they are still pieces of God. They are still children of the divine. And that we're at a huge crossroads. That was the other thing. So it's either we're going to continue to debase each other and murder each other and get bigger sticks to hit each other on the head because we disagree, or in the blink of an eye, we can choose to witness the divine in all. So that's how I wanted to kind of start it off, because as I said, boy, oh boy, are we in it right now. And the other thing, yeah, Magenta, I was mentioning just earlier, you have an absolute incredible library, as most of the folks that follow you, they know you had, and most likely have watched a lot of them as well. But you did a channeling, a teaching a number of years ago called the Deluge. And I think that is absolutely kind of what we're in right now, about all this information coming, very hard to discern what is real and what's not real. But anyway, so I'm gonna like just leave that there, park that there, ladies, and then let's see where we flow from here. Be okay.
Do you mind if I jump in? And before we start getting into the tools, perhaps acknowledging and validating some of the feelings and stuff that's actually coming up, because you're talking about the symptoms and the emotions that are obviously all linked, and the thoughts that we think and the emotions and the physical symptoms all connected. But I just want to share that, and I haven't actually sat down and done any healing on this at all this week. I've had the craziest busy week, but I'm really feeling, I can't, it's almost impossible to put it into words, what's come up around the whole Wayfair situation and the Amazon, Etsy, the rest of them. And seeing, like, I've watched videos about stuff that's going on. I've done some healing on how I've responded to that, what it's brought up in me, my fears, my own triggers of sexual wounding, abuse, all of that stuff. But this latest wave that's come up about the trafficking and the more horrific stuff that's being revealed, that's happening to these children, in a way, you know, when you kind of always know, but then you see it and it's like, fuck, this is real. And just being able to, I can't even watch the videos or look at the it's like there's a part of me that just, I can't go there, you know. And I feel that if I'm feeling this, and I have quite a large capacity to feel stuff and move through it and heal, how on earth are other people going to be dealing with this? And no wonder people are saying, no, that's not real, it's conspiracy, because they're just going, no, that cannot exist in my reality, because that destroys so much of my fabric of my reality. And that I don't believe people will be able to cope on you know, the mass of humanity. Finding it quite hard to put this into words. You know, when things get so bad, people just want to check out, numb out, take themselves out, do something, drug out, drink out, whatever it is, just get unconscious or not alive to what's happening, because it's too much. I feel that a lot of people are going to be feeling that, but because we've been so gradually isolated and separated from our emotions and from talking about it and from them being allowed without it being classed as being negative or low vibrational or any of that spiritual ass bullshit, I'm sorry, but that's total crap. That these feelings of rage, of despair, of grief, of horror need to come up out of the pit of the stomach, out of the pit of hell, and inside of us and in this world and in the collective psyche, because so much has been buried for so long, because we're not allowed to think about it, not allowed to talk about it, not allowed to show anybody that we have anything remotely ugly or dark, so that we're lovable. And so it has festered, and it's got pretty evil and dark and disgusting, and it has to come out. It has to come to the light, and it's not going to be pretty, right? So of course we need the tools. We need to, those of us that have ways to support and to share what we've got, and to really, I feel, really hold hands, come together in our groups, come together in our circles as we have sisters, come together in our communities, in our families, and get really real about how we feel. And some people are so isolated from being able to communicate their thoughts and emotions, because it's been so entrained and programmed and conditioned out of us, that I think we need to have patience and space and a deep capacity of compassion and listening, so that we can actually allow this stuff to come up to the surface and say, I am horrified. I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to act. You know, some people I feel are going to want to go on the rampage. I mean, we've seen riots. I don't think we've seen nothing yet in terms of protesting and riots and public displays of, I can't even, I don't even have the words. So I just feel like this is coming. It's going to get worse, like we talked about before. I think we talked about Pandora's box opening. Yeah. I think Magenta, we talked about Pandora's box opening, and yeah, the lid is off. We've seen the first wave or a wave, and the next is going to be horrific. So I just want to say to people, please can we make this real? Please can we talk about it? Grieving is going to be crucial. Raging in a safe environment where you're held in your community, in your circles, is really important. And transmuting and allowing those feelings out, except like you said, Paula, accepting, but then healing, and then being able to come to some kind of clarity or sense of, now what do I do from an aligned action? Aligned and conscious, not vengeful, rageful, grief-stricken, horrified. Put that into action and take that out onto the streets, or take that into our arguments or debates, but actually do the healing, feel the stuff together, not on our own, not in isolation, not in separation, not in social distancing, together. And then to be able to actually use these tools that we're going to share, or whatever works for you, and then go, right, now what needs to happen for the absolute highest good? Let our actions be from a place of absolute love and consciousness as much as possible, and make decisions together, listening to one another, you know, like in councils of brotherhood or sisterhood, or families, or whatever you want your council to be, and decide together what we do, because we're going to want to do actions to do something that's going to want to happen, right? So I kind of just want to set the stage and go, let the action come after the healing, and let's go forward with as much consciousness through this dark time as we can.
What you said there, Tara, that is actually the first tool that would benefit people, is if they state first thing in the morning, get themselves into a good space, into the feeling of gratitude that, okay, I've got a new day upon me. What can I bring into the world, little old me? Into that world, bring the intention of, for the highest and good today. My actions, my thoughts and deeds be for the highest good. That might be something that will help. Go ahead.
Can I also just jump in? Something really powerful happened to me yesterday. I've still been processing it. And so I have a confession to make. And my confession is that even though I know about all of this, even though I was targeted, even though I went through my own journey with it, with the sexual targeting, and I've known about this for years, as a sensitive crystalline being, I had yet to actually go and listen to some of the videos, like with the children being tortured or the dark web stuff. I can't handle it. And so I know that it exists. I'm not in denial of it, but I was being careful to not actually go and listen and witness that, because I didn't think there was really any reason for me to do that. And yesterday, as I'm scrolling, video comes up, and it's about, the Epstein story and everything. And so I listen to these things quite often. And the next thing I know, it's literally frozen on my phone. I can't get it off. And it's the audio track of the child being tortured by Epstein in the shower. And I just, in that moment, wanted to first jump in that screen and, rip that child out of Epstein's arms. I wanted to throw up. I was just absolutely horrified. And that's real. That's what everybody's processing right now. And in that moment, I was just like screaming out from my being to God, like, well, how can you let this happen? I just don't understand. Like, why will you not stop this? Why didn't you stop this so long ago? And I know that's what everybody's processing, so I'm just putting a voice to that right now. And all of a sudden, like, the brightest pink light came out of my heart, and just, it was so hugely amplified. I mean, I've seen it before, but it was like so solidified in a way that I was amazed. And I was in front of the ocean. It went to the ocean, and it was just amplifying. And I felt my inner child rise up from the victim to the light warrior. And something shifted in me. And what got activated in me was righteous anger. And that's not anger that's inappropriate. And I felt how Christ and Magdalene and every benevolent being, all of our ancestors that have come before us and are with us now, I felt that righteous anger and that activation. And I saw all of us stepping out of the victim role of the empath and stepping into the warriors of the lights, and what that means, and that our ability to hold the darkness is completely in connection to our ability to hold the light. And in that moment, I had to not judge that experience, even though everything in me wanted to. And what I was told was that I will not understand all of this. I will not understand why certain souls signed up for certain experiences. But what I do need to understand is that all of us that are part of the Galactic Federation, and I mean all over the universe, came back for this time, came in waves, came in droves, and are all in this together to ensure that this ends. And we know that God is going to win, and we have to stay focused on that. And the most beautiful thing happened when I was leaving the beach. All of a sudden, I don't know even where they came from, all these children started coming in. I mean, real children, not like astral children, real children. And they were smiling at me, and they were saying, hi, hello, and something had shifted. And I saw them as the galactic warriors of lights and starseeds, that they are the next generation, and they're here for a reason, and that they are a part of all of this, and we're all in this together. And then last night I had this dream, and it was all of these young child starseeds, now, as in now, and they are watching videos, and they're talking in groups about all of this from a very highly evolved expression place of, yes, this is happening. Yes, this is real. And there were teachers of us that were explaining this to them, and they were literally like these little Jedis that were these warriors of light rising up. They weren't afraid. They were no longer afraid. So I see it as the representation of all of us. And I also see it as the future generation to come. And it's just been something that I'm just still processing through my body. So I just wanted to share that because I feel like it's right in alignment with what's going on right now.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Can I say that is, you know, you were mentioning, Paula, the Deluge, the video that I channeled, I don't know, in 2017. That's it, really. I think that video was called The Deluge in the Dreamtime News Channel. So the Dreamtime News Channel being our higher connection through Dreamtime and the daydream, and having a deluge of information coming in esoterically and astrally, as well as in the physical world. And so that deluge is a flood coming down into us from above, that higher connection, into us from the physical world, so at us in that sort of horizontal way, and a deluge coming up. As you were saying, Tara, about everything's got to come up, all these emotions, no matter how dark they are. So every single person is dealing with this, and those that are not spiritually aware are still bringing down these downloads, but because they're not in alignment with the awareness and the understanding, they're not able to process that. So they've got all of that coming down, all of this higher information that they're not understanding how to process, everything coming up, all these dark lower emotions, negativity that have to come up for this purging, and then all of this information, which is why, as you said, Tara, so many people are shutting off. It's like, I want to I want to go away. I've had friends say, I want to move, I want to leave, I want to get away, as if it's the place you're in.
Yeah.
Let's leave England, let's leave America, let's leave Scotland, let's leave Africa. I mean, wherever it is, everyone wants to leave and move. And for some individuals, that is a calling. That is definitely a calling if they're in alignment with that higher flow. But for those in the sort of third dimensional place, it's not a calling, it's a reaction, it's a trigger, it's a resistance, and it's a reaction to that deluge and that flood of information. And the crux of that deluge, one of those things, obviously it's about falsehood, it's about secrecy, it's about lies that's now all coming out. It's a huge reveal, everyone opening their eyes, getting 20/20 vision in 2020. But the crux of that is about the children and the horrors that have gone on, and the child sex trafficking and the torture and all of that. And that's all starting to circulate. So we're getting that information, and I know that there are many light workers now and channels getting that information. If they haven't received it already, then they're getting information there. I'm getting tons and tons of questions from people asking about the rescuing and the tunnels. And I have to say that whilst partly that's true, and there is definitely a program or some kind of operation in progress, it isn't what's being circulated around the internet. A lot of that is hijacked disinformation to make the truthers think, yay, this is the white hats that have got this. It's you know, the cabal are done, they're over, the white hats are in charge, the children are rescued, Nessara, like next week. That is another false program. That's not what is happening. The cabal still have a huge amount of control, yet they are losing their control, and they are nowhere near at the level of the control that they were or that they wanted to be. And yes, there is an operation to save children from sex trafficking, and that is happening, but not to the extent that's being released into the truth community. So this is the deluge, and it's overwhelming. It's difficult to know what is true, what is false, which is why the spiritual alignment is what will assist you through all of this. I had videos sent to me just yesterday, testimonies of a little girl and a little boy who were actually talking about the abuse that they had suffered within this satanic sex cult in the UK. And then this was all covered up after the investigation. It took place in Hampstead, so anyone who's researched this story will know what I'm talking about. And then the father actually was filmed on television and was interviewed, and you can actually see him talking. And the news story is, you know, wrongly accused father, and then the awful mother. It was her, she was the evil one, and they took the children off her. The thing is, this story isn't over, because those children, the father got custody. And, you know, as a clairvoyant, I can tell you now that if you have followed this story, those children were absolutely telling the truth, and the father is totally cabal and absolutely acting quite well, enough to fool a lot of people, but not well enough to fool a clairvoyant psychic or anyone who can just see truth. So he got the children. They're still with him now, like years later. They were taken back into the system that the mother was trying to save them from, thinking she was doing the right thing by contacting the police. So we have to be aware that things are not rosy, in the sense that everything's okay, the children are being released, all those trapped children are now safe, Trump's about to announce it any day, and the cabal are most of them have been arrested already, and they're all at Gitmo. A lot of them have already been executed. This isn't true. This is disinformation that's circulating around the truth community. Yes, there's programs going on, and we must hold fast to this. And yes, it is going to all come out, but it isn't going to be rosy. It's not going to be pretty, just like Tara said, because we have to reach the people that are asleep. And they have to delve deep and do all the spiritual work in the space of a month or two, or a little bit longer possibly, that we've had the luxury of doing over the last 20 or 30 years. They're going to have to do all this in 2 to 3 months or a year, however long this interim period is, which Paula, you called, you gave
Twilight. Yeah, the guides called it the twilight time. So
yeah, exactly. That's a really good term to use for it. The twilight times, the twilight zone, the fourth dimensional bridge, the dark night of the soul. So that's what we're in. And the whole children thing is the crux of this. It's the core of this, because what's the one thing that's going to wake people up more than anything? It's our children. They are the epitome and the absolute highest symbol of humanity and humanity going forward. The children are the ones the adults are supposed to protect and nurture. And when you find out that it's not just a few bad apples, but it's an entire movement of people who are in power that have been doing the opposite of protection and nurturing, that's going to be something that many people simply won't be able to accept, even with videos and information in front of them. Because the story is so horrific and so fantastic, so beyond the realms of anything that they would imagine to be reality, that they simply can't find it in them to allow a belief system for that without becoming destroyed themselves in the process. And when it comes to watching this stuff and listening, Tari, Nina, you were saying about listening to this, you know, little girl being tortured. I mean, that is something we have to make a choice. When we go in to watch this stuff, there has to be a reason that we're watching it. Is it because we are accessing information? Are we trying to find out if something is true or false? Are we working with our own ability to take the observer viewpoint? What's the reason? If we already know this stuff, why go in and watch it? You're actually going to be moving into a focusing on the negative and creating it. However, you can watch it if you are going in with a reason, with an aligned intention, coming from light, and you have to take the observer view. You have to actually separate yourself and put yourself in a place where you feel the emotions and you actually integrate them and release them simultaneously to feeling them. And that is something that only an adept can do. I would not advise this to anyone.
No.
To actually look at this stuff unless they have that ability.
And it was your book, Magenta. So what happened a couple of years, it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I remembered I ordered Patricia Corey's new book. She was on with us a little while ago. She had a new book. I ordered it, and I don't remember how the second book, I don't remember ordering the second book. But the second book was called The Franklin Cover-Up, and that was written by John DeCamp, who was a senator in Idaho. And I read that book, and I had to put the book down at some point and say, okay, God, you got to help me out with this. I just read was, as you said, so incomprehensible. There was no way I could reconcile that on my own. And I had to put the book aside and have a one-on-one with God directly. And then when I read your book, Magenta, we talked about this when we did that interview like 2 years ago. I read your book and I used the process that the guides gave through you. And I can say it works because it worked for me. When I found out, so on the same sort of vein as what Nina was talking about, I found out what was in the Hillary Clinton video with Huma Abedin and a surgeon. And I found out about that, and I lit incense, and I brought all my candles into the bath, and I said, okay, God, you got to help me out with this. Because just like it's so there are no words, right? There are no words. So I brought in everybody, all the guides. I brought them in, God directly, and I'm like, all right, you got to help me out with this. And I was able to feel underneath it this incredible compassion, even though these people had done what they thought that, whatever, they're so lost in the darkness. They're so far from source. Like you said, Chrissy, there's a sickness. There's such a grotesque abomination. I can't even come up with another word.
Paula, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I must just say, the people perpetrating this, they're not lost in the darkness. No. They've deliberately chosen to go into the darkness with focus and choice. So it isn't that they're lost. They've deliberately chosen to go there for their reasons and their agenda. There are those that are lost. They're the ones that don't have that service to self polarization. But those who have come here to polarize within a service to self, negative, vibration, they're not lost. The ones that are in control of that hierarchical structure, it's an intention with focus. It's deliberate and very measured.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. What I wanted to share with that was because of what I'd learned through the guides that I work with. To your point, if something is presented to me, like if it comes into my world, I don't seek it, but it shows up in my world, I use what the guides have taught me while I'm witnessing whatever it is that is. And what I do is I put myself aside completely, step right out of the way, and I say, I see before me through the eyes of the Christ, through the eyes of love, and I allow, through my witness, I let God lift what it is that I'm seeing, because I can't. I'm not capable of doing it. I want to cry or go rip them apart and bring on board the mama bear thing. That's, anyway. Chrissy, you wanted to share something.
Well, kind of Magenta already put it in words, and like 10 times better than I could ever possibly do. You're amazing. But yeah, like tool-wise, you know, when people ask me what do I do with all this information, and I had a massive download about it last night. That when I tuned in, I was shown that only 13% of the conspiracy theories have truth. The rest are controlled opposition agendas, and they're doing that so that people start, you know, focusing on that really intensely and moving away from their own center again. So like you have the mainstream people looking at the mainstream news, taking everything in and believing everything. And then you have the ones that have gone, oh, no, apparently mainstream is not good. And they then start focusing on all the alternative stuff, and they just lap it up like without question. And that's a real controlled opposition. That is a real agenda that's being played out. And the only way to navigate through this really is to, and Magenta, you said it beautifully, is to be the observer. We have that divine essence. And the divine essence doesn't, it can be a seer, an eternal seer of what's going on. And that is the key right now. That is the absolute key for us to do right now, is to watch it and remove ourselves again, and then start working with everything that's going on inside of our body. There's all sorts of movement happening in our energy field, and all we need to do is witness that and allow that. And we already will have done 80% of what we have to do, I think.
Thank you.
Magenta, I would love for you to speak on this, because or whoever feels, but when I was hearing and witnessing that yesterday, of course I said, okay, I surrender. There's a reason that this was forced upon me, because I didn't choose to go watch this, and I can't turn it off. And so I realized something was happening in the moment. And I started witnessing the difference between it was a little boy, the little boy's energy and where he was coming from, and Epstein. And what Epstein was saying was, I'm your father. And it was a total desire to be God, to take over one's power completely and to be worshipped as one's God. But what I have to say is, just to be totally honest, there was nothing, and I know that you guys might get upset with me for saying this, because we're always saying, well, everything comes from God and everything is creation. But I really very clearly saw that Epstein was wired, as in he had already been very much controlled in an artificial intelligence manner. I saw nothing absolutely human in that. I saw no soul. I saw no light. I mean, I'm just being totally honest here. What I saw was metallics. I saw wires. I saw wiring. There was nothing human about that being. What was very human was this angelic child, which is why it upset me so much, because that was my family. That was my light family. And there was nothing in me that felt like Epstein was my light family. So I just have to be honest about that.
You're absolutely right, Nina. That's exactly what I was going to say. When people say, oh, we have dark or opposite light. No. The dark opposite light is a very divine playing out of on this earth realm. When I call it sickness, the reason why I call it that is because it is not of nature. It's not of the divine nature, and it is artificial.
I agree.
Yeah, that's the AI death machine. And from this perspective, from the third dimensional viewpoint and the fourth dimensional viewpoint, that there is nothing of God or spirit in that. It's only, even in the fifth dimension, whilst we experience unity and love, there is still polarity. It's only in the seventh dimension when everything fully starts to unify. When you view reality with a seventh dimensional viewpoint, which is incredibly difficult for most of us here, because there are very, very few individuals, much as many like to think that they're 7 deactivated or 12 deactivated. It's not true. We're at the fifth level. We're at 5 deactivated. That's where the collective is. There are some very, very adept souls, and you wouldn't be seeing them online talking. They are working in very, very different ways that have moved forward beyond that vibration. So when you look with the seventh dimensional perspective, which I can't do, I would communicate with the 9 and ask them to explain that perspective to me, because I'm not 7D activated. But from that perspective, there is source and God in every single thing. But when you take that viewpoint and try to translate it into third or fourth dimensional perspective, you're going to be going around like a fluffy bunny saying, well, that person, he's a paedophile and he's just raped that 4-year-old, but he's God. Let's just all forgive him and love him because he's just as much source as you are. No, that's nonsense. Come on. That's not how we integrate. That is being a fluffy bunny who's off the planet. We need to get back down to the grounding and realize, no, that person is a paedophile. That person is not of God in this viewpoint. So we need to understand that this multidimensional nature of reality gives us different perspectives, and each dimension gives us a different perspective, and those perspectives will appear to be contradictory. And if you exist within the third or the fourth dimensional perspectives only, you will not understand what I am saying here.
Totally. Liv, how are you? And I know that a few years ago you were kind of working with this as a little bit as well, I seem to remember. Do you feel like
I was remembering that. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I've been working with spirit. I work specifically with beings called the Kontomble. They're little people. I work with little people, basically. But I've been working with the Kontomble for 15 years, and they, I guess you could call them truthers, as you say too. They can tell me they're about, so they have been, doing ritual throughout the United States and throughout the world by now, but they have been bringing messages through for communities about what's been happening in these different ways, talking about all of these things for the past really 15 years they have been. And it's never really what people want to hear, but this is what's been happening. And then more recent, so I'm just basically guided by spirit, and they put me on assignments. And then one of the more difficult assignments was around the I was in a medicine journey actually, and they were showing me all these things that's where that particular assignment came from, about the child trafficking and that, and because they were basically like illuminating the shadow of humanity that was maybe, I don't know, like 3 years ago, or I don't know, what was that, like 3 years ago. And that was a more difficult assignment that they put me on. And I was almost, prepared to go into like Malaysia or something. Like, I take assignments very seriously. And also I perceive entities and demons and things like that too. And it's connected to what you're asking about, what can be helpful for people now. I think that what can be helpful for people now is the same as what can be helpful for people of what I've seen in the past 15 years, when, as long as I've been with spirit on this journey, I've also been engaging my own personal healing, trauma healing also. So what you're talking about, Nina, also hearing these, and if somebody hasn't healed so many of us have been traumatized in these ways too, of being sexually violated. So many of us have been. And if we haven't worked through those traumas, I think it can be incredibly difficult to, it just can totally like reactivate you. So I think that clearing, if people have ways to clear, that can be really helpful, especially right now, because I think that with what I've been watching, witnessing, and people that I know and work with in the States and different places, like it's off the charts. I think with all of those energies, the way I personally experience it, the more we heal our own energy fields, the less able they are to like hook into us. But yeah, you and I, we connected one of the last times in Tokyo. And yeah, so yeah, I've been paying attention to this for a while, and also the connection with all the ritual abuse and I mean, I've been tuned into this for a while, and it's, in a sense, it's been therapeutic for me in a sense to hear so many people talking about it now, because these things that I've been experiencing and energies like the cabal and that have been giving me a hard time energetically, spiritually for years, and I didn't realize, like, it wasn't until I had this experience, like saw how all of it was connected and how I could be tuning into these things in Mongolia. I mean, I've tuned into these things in these different places, like comes into my visions, into my, very, very disturbing. And realizing at the time, that was a couple years ago too, and I was like, I'm in the wilds of Mongolia, how am I seeing this here? And then I realized, like, oh my gosh, it's that. So because I've traveled to a lot of places by now, and I've connected, like, with the Kontomble in a lot of places by now. So I'm like seeing how vast it is. And even Christianne, the film that the Kontomble asked me to make, that the documentary that you were in, and I don't catch on to what they're doing until like years. I'm like years behind them and understanding why they do. And in that, there was a message that was recorded in that documentary in the wilds of Mongolia. I thought maybe they would be talking about the mountain or something like that. And they were going into this whole thing about like pedophilia and stuff. And now, I don't know if you ever saw it. No, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like the way all of this is, it's like, it's been blowing my mind.
Liv, sorry, Liv, to interrupt you. Can you explain who they are, who you work with spiritually, just to give some folks that are listening a bit of context, please?
Yeah, I work with beings called the Kontomble. So in 2005, I was guided to study with my longtime teacher, Malidoma Somé. So he's from Burkina Faso, West Africa, and I studied and apprenticed with him for 8 years. And even me in this lighter colored skin, however it is, we're souls and bodies. When I would go to Burkina and sit with the different diviners, they would see the Kontomble with me. So, and they would wonder, how is this American woman? Like, how's she with all these, Kontomble? She's never been here before. Well, anyway, it's just been like that. And so, so I studied and apprenticed with Malidoma for 8 years. Some people who go into shamanic work, like a lot of people know who Malidoma is, maybe in the States, he is sometimes in the UK, all of that. So with the Kontomble, they are the little people from there, and the little people are, as I've now realized, they're all over the planet. And that's also how Christianne and I connected, because I came to New Zealand and connected, but I've connected with, there was the little people really that connected Christianne and I, and I've connected with the little people also around the planet. And they're these, these earth guardians, and they're also the Kontomble. Like, to me, they feel like they're not, I connect with other beings too. I mean, I can connect with the angels and the different beings. And lately I've been connecting a lot with like God and Goddess and like source consciousness to comprehend, because it feels like there's an adjustment that's needed just to be able to be with this now moment. And so the Kontomble, they're not exactly, sometimes they feel like it's been a tough job working with them. They feel like it's an icy cold bucket, pouring on people a lot of times. So yeah. I've been this kind of messenger that they're tough, they're not, they want people to wake up and they're not always like, oh, and this was going to be nice, and this, you know, they're like, through a lot of the rituals that they've had me facilitate in the States, for example, they want people to feel like what Theyre was saying too, that, you know, it's like feeling, yes, not disconnecting, it's like feeling. And so a lot of times they'll bear in and they'll say, do you feel it? Do you feel it? And then suddenly people will start like erupting in grief or rage because people are so disconnected. And this was before any of this was going on. It could be about clear cutting of trees. It could be about all of, you know, what's happening to the earth. They're earth guardians. And I have heard them so many times talk about, you know, the children and what's happening, and they want, you know, they're trying to like snap out of it, you know. So it's been kind of been a little bit of a tough job working with them because they're quite intense. And also I'm so grateful too. And when everything, so that's what I'm saying too, when I've listened to these videos and listened to people coming out, I'm like, oh my God, I thought that was just happening to me. I didn't realize this is like what happens to us because of what we're sharing. I didn't realize, I mean, experiencing like reptilian energies in the wilds of Mongolia when I'm connecting with these reindeer people. I mean, when the Kontomble were coming through me and sharing messages with them, I mean, I've experienced some things by now. And when I listen to people talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. They don't want us saying these things. They don't want us talking about these things. And so I think, you know, I have a lot of admiration for all of you. You're being brave, and we need to be brave. And for as long as I've been doing this too, I mean, a lot of times people will send me messages and they're grateful that I speak openly about spirit, but I feel like that's part of it too. We have guides with us. We have ancestors with us. Like, we need to heal our ancestors also. And this is also connected to, of course, everything else that's going on. And I feel that if people have practices for clearing, because those little entities, they can really like get into people's thought streams very like, and you know, if we're radiating truly authentically, like radiating love and compassion and all of that, and we've healed a lot, we're not so susceptible. Yes, true. And also I've witnessed these energies, and I've been working deeply in communities for long time and watched how they do what they do. And that's I work with healers multiple times a week and do my own practices also to keep clearing and keep healing and keep healing the traumas from not just this lifetime but previous incarnations too, of how we can be so activated right now that makes it hard. And it just feels like, I mean, I'm as sensitive as it feels like you all are too, you know, and if I feel, and I listened earlier before I got on the line with you all, I was listening to interviews and listening what's happening right now, what's the latest. Like, I've been following all of these, you know, stories and everything, and it is heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking the ways recently people are allowing themselves to be divided. So it feels like any time, and especially now, is the time that we need to unite. And so I've found it hopeful, those who are able to really solid link, connect, that is totally where it's at, I think, anytime, but especially right now. And even just what you're saying about the practices too, I've started recently just doing stomach massage, foot massage, anything that you can do, because it's like literally hard to stomach. Just get into your stomach and start massaging so you can actually just, people are dealing with there's so much going on the planet right now that's all kinds of survival, everything. So you just like to be able to be embodied and to be able to be with it.
Yeah.
And do you feel as well that, because you said like something about solid coming together or something, because whenever I wonder like, why aren't we now all together? Because we're all separated on different parts of the planet. And I've asked before, like, why is that? And I was told because we're strategically placed.
Yeah.
But I am starting to feel, and I'd love to cross-reference this, is that I'm seeing more of us actually physically coming together at some point. Yeah, you yeah?
I feel that.
Yeah.
Long time coming. They told us that we would be gathering into our soul tribes, and we're like combinations. We're like combination locks in our energy fields and in our DNA codes, and we come together with our certain groups and we activate in certain ways, because this is a truly collective mission. It's a truly collective awakening. And yeah, it absolutely. So I'm traveling to another part of the world, and I'm absolutely being drawn there like a magnet, and I have to go, and I'm completely uprooting, and it has to happen.
So on what's happening to the world right now, if I just even reflect on what's happened in my world in the last 2 weeks, a member of my CrossFit gym was in a serious car accident. A trailer hit her, so she had surgery. So that's one situation, which is, you know, obviously very challenging to heal from. In my own world, I had somebody reach out to me, spoke with me live, shared much of what we've been talking about today with respect to an experience that this particular person had, booked a session with me, and within like 10 minutes wrote me an email, left me a voicemail accusing me of trying to be in their energy field and doing things with them. No, I know.
I've had that happen for the last decade repeatedly. Magenta, why were you in my bedroom last night? Why are you coming into my dreams? Why? Honestly, I've had it so many times you wouldn't believe.
Well, thank God you're sharing that, Magenta, because that had never happened to me before. And as to say, they left a voicemail on my phone and on my email, and I'm like, I just wrote a very nice email back saying, I'm sorry you are mistaken. Here's the phone number that can support you. And, you know, but just goes to show that people they're losing their shit, right?
They are losing their shit majorly. And I agree with whoever said it earlier that this is the beginning, and I've seen it get so much worse. I'm sorry
It's gonna get worse.
Yeah.
Well, Trump mentioned in his speech that on Tuesday of this week, so as I was sharing before we started, there was a low frequency energy weapon directed at him yesterday while he was making his speech, and you can actually see the frequency, but it was countered by our star brothers and sisters. But he mentioned on Tuesday the next 8 weeks was going to be like never before. So like we are in it, because the stuff that we've seen, like there's even Pinocchio. I don't know if you guys saw some of that stuff online. The stories of Pinocchio, the little boy, about how they're taking Pleasure Island and they never, like you can see what was going on in our nursery books, but I guess we didn't have the eyes to see or comprehend, right? So we're in it. We were
hypnotized. Mass hypnosis is what we've been under for a very, very, very long time. That's it, and we can feel bad about it, but we can't. We were on a total hypnosis, and it's.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you know, I had a client in this week that talked about a very tragic situation. And shared, though, the gift was they reached to God. They reached immediately in that situation, and it actually helped crack them open to that whole idea. And now they believe, right? So even though we're walking through, you know, I feel like, you know, we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. We feel like we're in it right now, like it's a shit show, right? Even though that's happening, there's so much more amazing happening on the other side. And I want to share a dream, because maybe you guys can help me kind of reconcile what this is. 2 weeks ago, Monday, I had a dream where I was walking towards a native gentleman. I thought I knew who he was. And he had a little person with him. So I'm saying he was an elder because there was a child with him. I'm walking towards him and I thought I knew him, but when I looked right in his eyes, I didn't recognize him. And he did this, look. And I looked to my left, and right over top of me was this huge, I think it was a buffalo, a massive buffalo. I dropped to the ground because I didn't want him to trample me, or because I looked and it's like right upon me. And as I woke up, he was sniffing me. Like I could feel the texture of him like sniffing my knee to sort me out, or suss me out. So I don't know, I know that there's, and then I've been connected with someone of the indigenous groups that have had direct experiences with giants and now reptilians. So who knows where this is moving into. So anyway.
Is it the giants or is it giants or Bigfoot?
Oh, well, that's completely separate. In my dream, as I say, I thought it definitely wasn't a horse. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The dreams that you were talking about, the buffalo, I believe, but when you were talking about the giants and the indigenous person, is it the giants or is it the Bigfoot or Sasquatch? Is that what you were talking about? I'm just curious because I have Native friends and they talk a lot about Bigfoot.
So my Native friend, she had a dream directly with the giant because she was in his hand, speaking to her at sort of eye level. She was small. She was able to go through a small doorway, and it brought her up to here. And it was to do with light. She saw a little piece of light in her pouch, and said, "I know where to get more of it." And the giants just lit right up, anyway. So I'm just saying, I bring that up because even though we're walking through all this stuff and this darkness, there's goodness taking place at the same time. And Magenta, you've shared many times before how our telepathic capabilities are coming online, how we're feeling more and sensing more. Because the other experience that happened to me last Friday was, this is going to sound crazy, it felt almost like I could taste the air, like a snake can taste the air. And in that, I could feel all of the lies and the deception. I could feel like the collective heaviness in the air, but like it's seems to be purified, I guess is the only word I can say. We've got a thunderstorm happening, hence the reason why I've gotten very dark in here.
We do have a thunderstorm happening. A collective thunderstorm is happening.
Yeah, there was a thunderstorm that started here right before we got on the line that seemed really out of the blue, that I was like, oh, it must be connected to this call. And I'm like,
well,
really?
You can see how dark.
And you're not crazy at all, Paula, because all of our senses are all linked back to the one sense and the inner sense. Your inner senses are connected as one to your inner sense.
Yeah. Well, that's new. That was a new experience for me. I'd never sat outside and been there's so much solace and heaven to be found in nature right now.
Oh, totally.
You can, like I mentioned this in a call I did, or a recording I did. It feels sometimes like the birds are singing just for me, and the wind. And I even feel like when the wind comes, it's like caressing me and loving me. That sounds like so funny too to say that. It feels real.
Space. Seriously, if the shit's hitting the fan with people losing it, I tell you one thing, sit on the ground or lie on the ground and be in nature, best possible fix you can have.
Or get to the ocean, get to the trees. I just, when you were talking about, Chrissy, when you're talking about things are going to get crazier and nuttier, I've also seen that. And what I've seen is that those of us that already went through this process, yes, we're still in our own process of healing the trauma, but a lot of us sitting here and that are tuning in right now, our timeline was different. And so we learned about a lot of this stuff 15 years ago, 10 years ago. We've been processing this for a long time. We're going to be holding a lot of space on the planet for when this collective kind of mental breakdown occurs. Because what I've also seen is that this group that has chosen to have this collective mental breakdown, they've chosen this because this is how they finally find source Christ God. Because when there's nothing else to turn to, and when everything in this world, and it's interesting because what we're, even biblically, ye are not of this world. And when you really understand what that means, it means that as this world is crumbling and the template of this world is crumbling, all of these satanic agendas are crumbling. What can you hold on to? Nothing outside of you anymore. All you can hold on to is what been gone through, the tremendous.
Say that again, Nina. Nina, your internet went. Would you say that again? All that you can hold on to. Say it again.
I said, when you can't hold on to anything outside of you, what can you hold on to? You can hold on to what's inside of you, because that is indestructible light. And that is what we are learning that we are. And I know that every single one of us has been through extreme trauma. We would have to have been to be initiated to get to this point of holding this much light. And that is initiation. So if a huge collective group has chosen mental breakdown, which these are just labels for a collective initiation, it is going to, what I'm seeing it as is a mental breakthrough. It is their way of finally waking up. And I've had to see, like, my husband's a part of that. I think my sister's a part of that. I've had to be prepared and understand that they're not going to wake up in an easy manner. And they're going to need all of us, because we're all going to be these pillars of light holding what appears to be sanity for them, as they're all kind of going, what is going on? I don't understand. And the mind is, it's like a de-brainwashing and a rewiring, and it's very intense.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. It's a de-brainwashing and a rewiring. That's a really good way of putting it. I'd just like to comment on the symbolism of giant. So if a giant is coming to someone in a dream, or if they are having visions of them or communicating with them, so this can either be a metaphoric presentation of the full 12 strand, 144 strand DNA, because the physical body incarnates within the planet to the size of the DNA activation a lot of the time, but not completely. So a 12D activated individual would be much taller in stature and build than we would. So also the giant, they're not really giants as in giants from fables. They're human beings that have this taller stature. So going back into the past, Lemurians were large, not all of them, but many of them were, 8 foot tall. And then you have future pathways where we are going in Earth's future. So you'd be looking at higher dimensional human beings following that human template with the higher activation, and other planetary systems. So you're looking at extraterrestrials as well. So there isn't such a thing as a giant. It's just humans aren't just the sizes that we know here on Earth. Humans have a vast range of sizes, as obviously Liv will know if she's communicating with little people. And when I was a child, they're the guides that I had with me. And when I say little, I mean they were very, very tiny. I had little beings come to me, and they were sort of an inch tall, and they would run across my bed, and they came to me when I was really, really
Christian. I had a feeling. They would come to you. That's beautiful. There are a lot of them that came to you?
Yeah, there'd be tons of them running across the bed. And I used to, it was almost like I was falling asleep, and I got so used to them being there that I got to the point where I couldn't fall asleep without them. But I was really young. I'm talking about sort of 4, 5, 6, 7, that sort of age, 3 even. Difficult to remember beyond sort of 4 years old, but I still do have memories of being that young. And they didn't speak to me, but they actually broadcast a signal of energy and took me into an altered state, or rather I felt that they were. I mean, this I say could be and is the subconscious mind, and the ability for the subconscious mind to project oneself into an external presentation. So you're kind of looking at your own subconscious external presentation, as well as an actual individualized consciousness as a group of extraterrestrials or ultra-dimensional beings. So I didn't know what that was as a child. I don't think I ever discussed it with my parents, because I just thought, there's my little people, and they would help me fall asleep. And I just got used to them being there. It was the feeling, though, that I perceived them as broadcasting a feeling across me. I'd go into this altered state, and it was just so beautiful and blissful and just like home, and I would feel comforted and safe. So obviously, I mean, I'm told by the 9 now that all starseeds will have had regular visitation, if you will, if you want to call it that, but regular moments where the brainwave state would have gone beyond the normal human brainwave state. The DNA sort of doppelganger keys or shadow keys or quantum light keys, whatever you want to call them, would practice in activating in the children that were set to be significant in the movement of the awakening of this planet.
And I think that's a really good way, maybe a good segue to talk about how source and spirit communicates with us. But you're so giggly, Liv. I love your way. It's I feel like you've got little people with you now, maybe.
It does.
Always.
Big time.
Yeah.
That's why I'm laughing. They're all around her.
Every time I look, I was laughing also that you said that, because I was remembering when Magenta was talking, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to say that they talk through me in their language. and then I translate it, like they communicate through in their tongue. So I went through an initiation one of the times that I went to Burkina, and it was, like a near-death experience. And then I remembered how to communicate in their tongue. So when I talk to them, there's like these bells that I have, and there's like bells that I ring, and the rattle, and then they talk through in their tongue. And then it's like, la, it's really high pitched.
They want to come through, don't they?
Can you do it now?
I felt that right before I got on the line with y'all. I was like, I'm just gonna pretend like I don't know that that's happening right now.
But I can see that they're trying to use your vocal cords.
I know, I'm just flowing with listening to everybody. I know, I could feel
when they're there, like it's so tangible, that energy of the Kontomble.
It's hard to hold them back when they come.
Yeah.
There's like a whole village there. And yeah, when I'm sure you all feel them, because you all are connected spiritually anyway. So I'm like, whew.
I know.
Yeah, you were saying?
Nice attempt, Liv, on a deflection. I don't think you're gonna.
I'm happy to, like, I can make way for them to talk at a certain point if you all want to hear them. I don't want to, like, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to be polite. I don't want to, like, steer it, because they're, big beings. So I'm just trying to be, thoughtful of this thing that we're all doing together.
Well, we were just about to say, move to, as I say at the beginning there, I had shared that the guys were talking about what we're in right now is releasing the idea of separation. Talked about tools earlier. For anybody that's listening, there is a fantastic series on Gaia TV right now called Initiation by Stefano, which is really great, because in season 2, episode 3, they actually start to talk about the giants and the reptilians. So hey, it's just something interesting. Matthias, he can remember a couple of his lifetimes, one of which I think was 60 million years ago. So it's an interesting perspective, is all the reason why I bring that up. But I know for me, I always thought in my innocence that when my guides would come to me, that they would say, hello, Paula, this is your spirit guide talking. And it would be in this big booming voice, and it'd be like, oh, there they are. But I've learned it's like this, if they are going to speak, it's a teeny little whisper. It's so subtle, right? But now I know for me, it's the feeling in the chest place. I feel it's feeling. And Magenta, you had shared this many times with your story when you were originally beginning to connect, when you were looking for your guides, and then when finally the 9 showed up, you had no question of it. And it's because there's the feeling, as Liv, you shared, it's the feeling and the symbology, right, that they use in the world. Like, as I say, a bumblebee, just hello, or a hummingbird, or what have you. So I want to open that up to because I want to let the folks know that, yes, we are walking through this absolute shit show, and it's going to get worse, and we are going to get tested beyond anything we've ever been tested by before. And like Nina said, the heaven is within. You got to go within, and nature as much as possible. That's the anchor. But at the same time, there's this huge opening that's happening. And maybe we can chat a bit about symbology and how folks can get more connected. I teach it's through the heart, and then I open up the floor, and maybe our friends will want to chime in on that too. So expand on the symbology and how spirit communicates with us.
Well, it can happen through master numbers. So you can see 1111, 1212, 144, 108, all of these combinations of numbers, which will be universal, as in collective, or could be individual to you. So it could be your birthday or a significant date. So that's the geometry, the mathematics of the universe communicating with you. But to be honest, this is so very unique. When we go through an ascension experience and a communication with higher density experience, we are all going through something very, very similar, but it is completely unique. There are no two people that will go through the same awakening experience or communication experience, even twins. So it can be very, very different for each individual person. And the person often feels, oh, I'm crazy. Like you said, oh, I'm tasting the air. I've never heard that before, ever, you know, but I don't think that that is crazy, because that's a unique ability and skill, and to you, Paula, and that's the way that you are working. And when I used to see clients come to me, I saw people all over the world for 7 years. The difference in their individual ways of communicating with the universe were just abundant. And you know, I had some amazing insights from working with these people. Some people would see extensive communication through number plates on cars, through horse racing, would you believe, even though that's a negative energy in and of itself, as in the winning number. So again, we have numbers, or it would be the weather, or flowers, or birds coming to them. Birds were often really, really symbolic. So opening up emails, watching television, seeing films. So you've got the whole control side of television, as in tell a lie vision, but you also have the awakening. There's always a counteracting force, there's always a balancing force, and you can use that for divination. If you say before you watch a particular film or drama series, I wish to know the answer to this question, please can you give me the answer. Sometimes you might have to hunt around to look for the episode, but if you're in that alignment, you'll know. I often do this. I'm not one of those starseeds that's stopped watching television. I still have Netflix, and you know, I still watch Amazon Video and Now TV, and maybe I'll come to a time where I'll scrap them all, but at the moment I do still watch them, even though I know that that's a controlled system. There are ways that you can use your own energy field and your own alignment to turn that into the positive polarity. Use it for divination. The same with computer games, which are a control tool and they are negative, but you can actually do the same thing with computer games. I have had clients come to me who woke up through computer games. So there are multiple ways that it works. And you were saying, Paula, about how when my guides came to me, you know, at first I was just seeing the visual, and then I had the feeling. And that was profound for me, because the feeling joined with the visual, and then a little bit later on I had the clairaudience as well. So all three were sort of merging together to give me this picture of this higher communication. But it doesn't have to work that way. Some people could be in a feeling state for 20 years but never see anything clairvoyantly, not really getting any visions, not hearing anything, but feel, and then they might stay that way for their lifetime. Or at some point, suddenly they might get a vision, or suddenly they might hear something. Some people might stay clairaudient only for years and years. It's so very unique, and basically anything can be part of that symbolism. It's all to do with the externalization of the subconscious mind, the higher awareness. The symbols that come are a universal language. We know this as the language of light, or the light language, which Nina and I were discussing in our previous roundtable connection that we did together, talking about music. We were talking about light language and the different ways that that can come through. And the nines say this to me, these are flame letters or fire letters, and they're called that because when you actually look clairvoyantly at creation itself, as in the fabric of the 0 point, which is pure potential, it looks like a flame, it looks like fire, and those letters that come out of that cosmic alphabet are simply pure potentiality. But because we share a collective mind, we all can respond to the same or similar presentations of these archetypes and these symbols. So communication with the universe can be very, very unique, very individual. The issue is, how is it making you feel? Obviously, are you feel excited, happy, joyful? Do you feel fearful, afraid? All of these are clues, but none of those are wrong or right. It's just like having a piano, and the fear and the anger and all of that are the sort of lower notes, and the excitement and the joy and the happiness, the higher notes, but you need the whole spectrum on that piano keyboard to be able to play a tune, to be able to play a symphony. The key is being in alignment. Being in alignment and being centered, as in clarity rather than confusion. Because if you get something come in, some communication, and you're, oh, what's that? What does it mean? That doesn't add up with this. And it can freak you out, and you can go for days feeling like you're going crazy. But even that isn't wrong, because that in itself is a path to an awakening. And if you ask any clairvoyant psychic channel, they will have been through that. They will have been through days. I've had days where I've had to shut myself away, not speak to anyone, because I feel my brain is going crazy and I don't know what's happening. And then you come back to an alignment, and that's an activation. The 9, well, it wasn't the 9, it was actually White Spirit. When I first connected with the first spirit guide entity, 5th dimensional aspect, back in 1993, he would say to me that your mind is like a volcano. And the way to take you into expansion is to take the volcano to the absolute top just before that volcano blows. Because if you're down here, you're not getting enough expansion. If the volcano blows, that's the metaphor, you've gone insane. Your mind is broken. You have lost your mind. And they said to me, those who have come in as starseeds are coded to be able to take the volcano to the very highest point, but it will not blow. And he would say, I assure you, no matter how much of this deluge of information that's coming into you, that volcano will not blow. And I believed and trusted in White Spirit. So I would allow him to take me to this absolute highest point of expansion, where I would feel completely crazy, but still in alignment with that craziness, and go away and integrate it. That's kind of how it was for me. And I know that a great many starseeds and light workers will go through something similar, and the whole truth movement are doing it as well, even if they're not waking up in a download upload capacity or a universal higher connection capacity. They're getting it all from information coming in from the news, the alternative news and social media. That's because they came in to be coded to work within cyberspace. So we have masters and adepts in cyberspace. These are the truth warriors, keyboard warriors, social justice warriors of light, whatever you want to call them. They're the individuals who are able to spot cues messages or any other symbol, or dissect a photograph, or take a video that's been scrambled by mainstream media and turn it into its true form. There's hundreds and hundreds of these individuals, and they're doing the most fantastic job. The Patriots, I guess, is also another name for them. So they're awakened as well, in a different way. So so many unique ways of communicating with the universal structure and with reality itself.
Your team works with all the props in your life, right? Like they know what sites you visit. They know like your kind of what books you read and whatnot. Because I always find it's so amazing how you can have a question and then all of a sudden someone sends you an email and it's like, oh wow, there's my answer. So they'll always find a way to communicate, right?
What you have, it's you've laid that for yourself. Before
Right.
you're born, you lay out your blueprint, and all of the synchronicity and the signs, you lay them out, and then you enter reality and live them in real time. And there are multiple choices, just like a computer game. If you watch that Black Mirror Bandersnatch, you're actually interactive. I think it's the first and only interactive film that we have out there. It's on Netflix. So you are interactive with the character. So when you first watch Bandersnatch, the character is going down for breakfast. Should he have cornflakes or should he have shreddies or whatever the choice was? And then the options will come up, cornflakes or shreddies. You choose which breakfast cereal your character's going to eat, and then it goes on into another journey or storyline. That's a very basic example of what's happening to us. We've created this quantum storyline, which is an infinite structure, which is all and everything that we are. When we enter incarnation, we then live that storyline with these multiple choices. When we move into that 0 point place, we can then change the blueprint. So we can change the entire storyline and shift everything around. That is the perspective that we need to be able to see what's going on right now. Because when we're immersed in 3D, but we need to be immersed in 3D, we don't want to live in the observer viewpoint all the time, because that isn't going to help us in the grounded, anchored physical reality. So we do need to get down to 3D, but we need to be always aware of that observer viewpoint, which is the 0 point. That's where we have power. That's where we have choice. And everything that happens to us has been pre-planned and pre-created. That viewpoint often scares people because then they think they have no free will, but you have free will within that whole quantum field of all these multiple possibilities that you chose for yourself. You have free will within the 0 point, but there is also a perspective where, yes, actually, you don't have free will from that point of view because you're following your blueprint, which you already created for yourself. So there are, all of these perspectives are correct, and everyone's arguing about, is this right, is that right, all of these things that are happening now. The Illuminati cabal, they know this. They know how people work. They know how people's minds work. They've studied psychology, so they know how to mildly torture, if you will, and that's what's actually happening. And it is mild, certainly at the moment. We may be going into a sort of step up of that, but it's nothing next to what they do to their own family and how they can control their own family and their own children and how they raise the next generation of cabal members. That's the way that they work. So they understand us. They know how we work. They understand us psychologically. We have to be one step ahead of the game, even if we don't know exactly what their next move is. We have to be aware of what their move might be and what our reaction might be to that, because what they're actually doing is creating situations where everyone's going to have their own very, very personal opinion, and everyone will argue. So, you know, we've gone through the sort of racism thing, and now we're onto the masks. Do we wear a mask or don't we? The people who are wearing a mask, those that aren't are calling them sheep, and they're a slave to the system, and it's their own fault. They deserve what they get. Those with masks on are saying you're all crazy, you know, I don't believe what you're saying, you're conspiracy theorists. And then there's all these different nuances in between. And I can tell you now that there are starseeds and light workers and adepts that will be wearing masks, and there are people who have no spiritual understanding whatsoever that won't be. So this is not black and white at all. It is not a polarity in that sense. It's one great big exercise to divide. And then we've got what's coming down the line, which is, you know, even worse choices than masks. However, there's this whole other team of individuals that are coming in from their perspective, which is a life-preserving growth paradigm, which is the white hat alliance that you might call them, if you like. So this isn't just about the death culture coming in from the cabal. We have a big spoke in their wheel, because every move they make, the white hat alliance is also making a move, but it isn't what we're being told on social media. Like Christianne said, we have this controlled opposition, and we have to know. And I'm telling you now that controlled opposition has a particular frequency. It has an encryption to it, a code, and it's as clear as day if you are in alignment. Someone will send me something and I just scan it for a few minutes and yep, that's controlled opposition. But I don't go down and force that down people's throats, because I actually have friends who will jump on this, just like you were saying, Christianne, and these are loving, sweet, beautiful light worker people that have open hearts and are so innocent, but because they're allowing their emotion to hook them into the information, they're unable to see the encryption or the code. So if you see something like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, Messera, it's happening next week, everyone's free, yay, 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 without stopping and thinking, okay, I've just been giving this information, I would love to believe this, but what is the truth here? What's the code? And if you can't see the code or the encryption, go and look for the source, research the story before you plaster it all over your social media and tell everyone it's true, like everyone else is doing. You are then adding to the controlled opposition thread. So it's quite easy when you move into that alignment, when you have that trust and that insight, you can see the difference between what's true. And what they do is they take the truth, the real truth, and then add all of this craziness into it and merge the two together. So any information you're getting that's controlled opposition will have truth inside it, which is why it's so confusing for those who can't see the encryption, can't see the code, because there's so much truth there. You're in alignment with that truth, so you think it's all real. Or you might go the other way and think it's all complete nonsense and throw the baby out with the bathwater. You need to take everything and think, right, which bit of this information, whether it's a video or a meme or an article or a book, whatever it is, which bit of this information is resonating with me and is true, which bit is not. That is what we're here to do. We're here to decode the metaphor and communicate with ourselves in that, in the way that we perceive as communicating with the universe or communicating with extraterrestrials, communicating with the higher self. We're actually communicating with the true self. And in that journey, we become unified with all of our other selves, all of the other individuals that are on this planet. We move into unification with them. And when we're in unification, alchemical unification as a unified whole, moving as one mind, one heart, not as a Borg mentality, but as a service to others, beautiful flower of life projection as a collective humanity. When we get to critical mass of that, that's when we reach this singularity, this inevitability, and that is when we move into this new earth, and that's when the cabal are exposed and fall and are over and leave the planet. That's the journey we are on, and we need to keep hold of that sight while we navigate this third dimension. And yeah, it's a challenge. It really is a challenge, but these are the tools we need to do it.
Yeah, because fear knows your name, right? Fear knows your name, and fear knows exactly what to say to be aware. And the other thing about the cabal, the Illuminati, if you listen to the way they speak, you can even hear the weaving of distortion through what they're trying to present as truthful. Like and what they're basically trying to do is baffle you with bullshit. They're trying to talk their way into, well, I'll confuse them so much they won't have a clue and shut it off and go have a beer or go shopping and get some retail therapy, right? So a couple of things that the guides have shared with me, what folks can do to help them, since we're talking about tools, is on a little Post-it note, write the words, I have no need for fear, and stick it in your bra or put it on your side table, just as a mind review. I have no need for fear. I have no need for fear. And be aware when you're making decisions based in fear, and be aware when you're making decisions based in obligation. Like that's one activity that can help folks with their self-awareness when it comes to fear.
Paula, can I just say, sorry to keep jumping in here. That's a brilliant, brilliant tool. But what I would do is take the word fear out of it, because if you're writing it on a piece of paper and sticking it in your bra, you've got the word fear against your breast. You don't want that, or wherever else you decide to put that piece of paper. So take the word fear out. What is the opposite of fear? Empowerment, safety, confidence. So then you would change that to I have confidence, I have empowerment in all things, and write that down, because then that is a sort of a negative vibration that's going out into your sort of universal manifestation. It can be done when you're doing it as a collective work with other simultaneous perspectives, but if you're using it as an exercise with a piece of paper, the exercise itself is brilliant, but you would remove the negative word for that particular exercise and change the wording, especially if you're putting it in your bra.
Okay, Tara. I've been feeling that. I've been sitting next to her, and her energy has been doing something, and I have the feeling you want to say something or not. Or maybe I'm wrong, but
I just want to remind us, I want to make it really simple. And I want to remind us that what we're talking about in the Cabal and all of this mind control and everything that's going on, there are 33 degrees of initiation into this agenda. We have no scope for that. We don't have an experience of that. And so we're coming from a very uninformed place. And I'm not saying just we, I'm all of us humans generally who have not been initiated into those levels of anti-life and anti-love. And because we are unconditionally loving beings of source, we cannot fathom that, because that's the furthest away from love you can get, is through those initiations. And I don't think any of us will want to travel through those initiations, or you know, we have no calling to, we're not called to, we haven't. So to try and navigate through this minefield, and it is a minefield of cognizant brainwashing, like I'm just going to call it mind fuckery because it's just easier to say it that way, right? Total head fuck, complete scrambling of what it is to be a human being. Like you were saying, Nina, it is no longer human, because the human, which is unconditional love, seems to be completely removed. Therefore, what's left? Trying to exist as something to feed itself on something, because there's existence then in an absence of unconditional love. And we can't understand that unless we go and live that as well, which of course we're not going to. So to try and understand it and cognitize within ourselves what's true and what isn't true, I just want to say, trying to follow it and understand it and pick through it, I would highly recommend we don't. Right? Trying to understand that is, I just want to say, I would highly recommend not doing that. But to make everything that all of you have said, really, really, to bring it into the simplest form, is to speak of love and unconditional love, and all that is unconditional love. And again, unless you've been in that state of being unconditional love, because again, you can't bring your mind and understand with your mind what unconditional love is. You can't, you can feel it with your heart, you can feel it in your body, but it's another thing being unconditional love through and through, with all of your parts resonant and in harmony and in alignment with that, right? So we have these, what seems like an opposing spectrum of that which is so far, or seems so far from unconditional love, that we can no longer, like, it's super dysfunctional, to say the least. And then we have this, what seems like the other spectrum of such purity, such unconditional love, that again, we don't fully understand, because few people have been there and been that. And so here we are existing somewhere in this spectrum. Not love, love. So I just want to offer a really simple way of navigating, is that we all know what love feels like. Even if people say, I don't know what love is because I can't understand it up here, it's innate in our programming as human beings to know what love is, because that is our source prime creator energy, is unconditional love. You might call that 0 point, but even 0 point is completely neutral, and yet it's unconditional love. It's a point of consciousness within unconditional love. In my experience, and all I can do is share my experience, absolutely everything in creation, anywhere, ever, is unconditional love, either realized or not realized. Right? Whether we realize it or not, whatever spectrum of consciousness we are on, everything is unconditional love. And again, we can't imagine that, just like we can't imagine the antithesis of that. We have to become it. And that is why we are alive on this planet now, is to become that. That is the one and only mission of Mother Earth, of Gaia. That's her DNA blueprint, right? Magenta, I understand the blueprint. Archangel Michael taught me that about years ago. You're completely right. It is set. We have free will within the story. And yet also Gaia has a blueprint. And there's the blueprint of all the synchronicities and you know, the triggers, as well as the synchronicities, the divine meetings, and the minefields are going to blow up in your face and trigger you to bring your awareness to it. That's all in the blueprint. Your past lives, your past soul experiences, your mother, father, ancestral lineages, the future timeline, is all in the blueprint. And yet there is something else that's happening, something else so fundamental, so key, is that Mother Earth, Gaia, as we know her in that name, is here as a being of solidified, what appears to be densified, materialized, unconditional love. And since we are here in these densified bodies of the earth, of the same material, the same fabric, the same mineral, the same bone, the same water, all that she is, we are, it is our only purpose to realize ourselves as beings of unconditional love in a solid form matter, in a densified matter, as is Gaia. And so we have all of these dimensions of consciousness, and yet all of those dimensions of consciousness are existing now in this time frame, in this physical human body, because it needs to be here on this level of density, on third dimensional density. And there are so many beings. We talked about soul tribes gathering. We could be talking about universal soul tribes gathering. We're talking about all beings, like the little people, the big people, the invisible people, the invisible people, all frequencies, all ranges of expression of unconditional love that have been in gestation, that have been incarnating and disincarnating and incarnating again for a very, very, very long time. For this time frame now, there's been a bottleneck where it's been getting jammed of the souls trying to get into this planet now for a massive collective awakening of souls, of beings, of all frequencies, all dimensions, to unify in the one frequency of Gaia as unconditional love, as she births herself into her full glory of unconditional love. So we are actually aligning our frequency, our thoughts, our feelings, our bodies to her energy. We have a symbiotic relationship with the mother. She is our mother. We are the babies. We are in symbiosis. We are never disconnected, not like those people who cut the cord as soon as the baby is born, which is horrific, by the way, and in my opinion should never be done. It's highly traumatizing. That cord is not cut, even though they might physically cut a cord. We are not separate from our mother Gaia. She has us in her unconditional love. Everything is in her remit. Everything is in her field of protection. Everything. Even our divine will is encased and encompassed by her will. And her will is that all her babies come home. All her children that she's ever had, that she has created, that live on her, that have breathed through her, that have, you know, danced on this plane of existence, come home to her, that which she is, which is unconditional love in a physical body. And yes, our physical bodies will transform when we emit that level of unconditional love that we are, that she is. But first we have to anchor and root, right? So we have to make it simple. I'm going to encourage people, all of these signs and symbols, they're fantastic, but don't get lost in tripping out on them. Ultimately, you get yourself low to the ground, you get into nature, you plug into nature, you plug into your own nature, you listen to your waters, you listen to your heart, you listen to your bones speaking to you, you listen to the mother within you, you listen to the inner divine child within you that remembers itself as unconditional love. And we come home to that. And as you were saying, Liv, I love how you were speaking as well. That which affects us is not to leave home, as in leave ourselves and leave our senses and leave our, bodies, if you like, to go out on the search to discover or to fight a perceived enemy or a perceived threat or discover something. But it's actually to stay within the self, stay within the body, stay consciousness, become more conscious of what's happening here. And as we sensitize, we can feel more and more and more. And we feel it here, not outside of ourselves. And as we feel it here, that's where we do the returning of everything that doesn't feel like love back to love. We become the transmuter, the channel for, or the filter, if you like, not the filter, but the transmuting channel for everything that doesn't feel like love, for it to come back to unconditional love, because we are it. we are it. And so I was taught a very simple method and worked with archangels and all kinds of beautiful, Christ, Magdalene, all of the beautiful, amazing souls and spirits of absolute unconditional love, and the archangels, and it's particularly Archangel Michael, who liberates us from all karmic stuff. And they put it into a very simple 7-step method of how to transmute everything and anything that doesn't feel like love and bring it back to unconditional love. And we are the ones that do that individually, every single one of us. The best, most important, most powerful job you can do on this planet for humanity and for all beings everywhere, on all levels, all densities, all timelines, past, present, future, everything, is to become conscious of the unconditional love that you are and clear or transmute what doesn't feel like love back to love. Simple. And it's really, it's so simple that children can do it, that people on their deathbed that can do it, that deaf people, blind people, you don't have to be a healer to do it. You don't have to be an ascended master. You don't have to have done, you don't have to be an old school anybody in the spiritual realm to do it, because it's like water. It's so simple, it's so pure, it's so real that absolutely anyone can do it, and we all must do it. And we must come home to love that we are now. And that's the only thing that's happening on this planet.
Anybody needs a visual. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Now, when you're speaking of unconditional love, a lot of people make an automatic association with fluff.
It's so not fluffy, it's hardcore.
When I've been experiencing the Gaia energy, it's actual really tough love. And I've been really feeling that recently. And I've been learning to unconditionally love tough love, rather than thinking it needs to all be love.
No, unconditional love isn't fluffy. It's that love, like you said, the mama bear. But it comes from a place of absolute consciousness, not just a reaction of I'm gonna fight you, you hurt my baby. That's protective mothering. Unconditional love is something else, and it's like Mother Earth. You will come home now. By my command, all my children come home. And I'm going to speak to this, and I'm sorry if it feels like, maybe it feels like a contradiction. I don't feel like it's a contradiction, because it's all in the same vein. But that which we perceive as absolutely the antithesis of unconditional love, i.e. the Epsteins, the Darks, the rest of that whole, I don't even know the words. As we perceive that, to notice what happens in here, and to do these 7 steps. Anybody wants to look at the 7 steps? There's a book, I Love You Me, 7 Steps to Transformational Self-Love. This is what was given to me as a tool. Personally, I want everyone on the planet to have it and make it their own tool, right? it's not even my tool, right? It's a tool that was given to me that brings everything back to that unconditional love, and to perceive and experience, like as we're watching those videos, as we're seeing the news, as we're whatever's coming into our field of awareness, to take responsibility and say, this is happening to me, I'm seeing this for a reason, it's triggering whatever it's triggering, and we bring everything that we are experiencing back into harmony within ourselves. And then when we come into action, well, I believe that's the most powerful action we can do, because we can just transform so much like that. However, we do want to act. We are beings of the 3rd dimension. We do want to do something collectively or together, or, you know, there has to be that physical removal as well, right? I'm not saying it's all on that. It spans the whole realm. It's not just spiritual, mental, emotional. It's all levels. And when we are coming from a place of that unconditional love, then that wisdom of the unconditional, of that love, comes through. Then we can take an action that is going to be so powerful and so aligned that it will break through any dark magic, any cabal, anything. It's impermeable, it's impenetrable. Unconditional love is the most powerful force there is. That it's what the truth is, as far as I'm concerned. So that's what I needed to say.
And I was just going to add that if people need a visual, right, they know the science of Dr. Masaru Emoto. When we bless water and when it gets crystallized, it's this beautiful sacred geometry. So we're talking about emotions and us having mostly water, versus if you put hatred. But you have to remember, this is conscious. Water is conscious. This is one of the building blocks of matter, right? Water, earth, fire, and air. It's all conscious. So how we speak to ourselves, talk about self-love, Tara, and to another, can be reflected in those crystal forms that Dr. Masaru Emoto discovered. So if people want to see how you're operating in the world to yourself, do you love yourself? Love the point that you made about honor your own body, to talk to your own body, because it will start to talk to you back.
Very much so.
Need from you for support.
And that's what you were saying as well, Paula, about the end of separation. For the end of separation, it's separate. The idea of separation only comes from this self here, and we're programmed that way. And there's a reason for that. We have an identity chip in our head that says I am separate, and it informs every system in the physical body, mental body, emotional body, spiritual body. We are separate, so that we can have an experience of being separate. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to remove your ego or try and mantra yourself out of being separate. You are separate to have an incredibly beautiful gift of a sense of being yourself, right? So that's not something to try and get rid of. That's something to appreciate and to love. However, when in that state of unconditional love for this immediate environment that I am, which is the only thing I can control, the only thing I can actually master is myself and my experience, nothing outside of me, because that's your business and somebody else's business, not my business. I can master myself. I can come into that state of unconditional love more and more and more by loving everything that feels unloving. And as I embody that, then I am not separate from anybody, because love has no separation. I can still appear to have a separate body. I can still enjoying the touch of another person because I'm separate, or having a relationship or a conversation through our self-identity, separation bodies. But there's an absolute reality of that. I see no separation between us, because you can't in unconditional love. So in unconditional love, I love and serve myself as the divine, as the truth, as the love that I am. I learn from the love that I am. I'm the student of the love that I am. And then that permeates everything, and everything is love. And I can love and serve others like exponentially, because I've mastered it here first.
I feel, what are you about to say, Christiana?
No, you first.
I feel such a good medicine for now is like yes and that it feels, you know, because I feel when I'm listening to all of you, I'm like, it's great medicines, yes, and we're individual, and also it's yes, and it's like the third dimension, and it's the multi-dimension, it's yes, and it's the I've personally, in these recent times, I was touching on it a little bit earlier, I've felt called to shift and connect more. I've been connecting more with like angels, Kontomble, yes, also, and also the God, the source, the connection in that way, and then yeah, feeling that like the whole total, and it doesn't at this time, it feels like what you were saying, Paula, also about you smell, and there's this particular kind of sensory experience. It feels like in the energies that are happening right now in the greater, there's sometimes when I listen to an interview or something, you can pick up so much more information audibly. It feels like there's these other kinds of abilities or something that are available or accessible now. And I also find that I'm really desiring the deeper comprehension of truth and understanding how I can be supportive. And it also feels like it's coming from deeper listening, like deeper and deeper and deeper listening, like feeling with your whole being. And for me personally, it doesn't feel right anymore. Like I'm just cleansing judgment, like intense judgment out of my system. I was like born in the States. We're like born in this culture that's like very judgmental, you know, and just to be able to be aware of what's happening and to be able to be effective, but not getting so like trying to work through the reactivity, basically, so that we can be effective, so that we can be with what is happening. And even like what I was talking about earlier too, the stomach massage and everything, and they'll talk about gut knowing, like the information that you pick up from your gut. Well, that's easier if your gut is, you like make sure that things are, you know, the energy is moving there, so you can pick up from the little senses. And from our hearts, you know, if our hearts aren't so overwhelmed and the energies can move, then it's, you know, it's easier to feel. I love like everything I experience, life from the heart. Our hearts are so wise. We keep coming to our heart and trusting ourselves and keep clearing so that we can feel the clear heart center. And our hearts are so wise.
Heart knows truth.
Absolutely.
I just heard this. We are growing up in our understanding of unconditional love. We as a collective are growing up in our understanding of unconditional love. And that includes being guardians of unconditional love. And that begins with ourselves. You cannot unconditionally love outside of yourself first if you do not unconditionally love yourself first, if you are not being a guardian of your own inner child, if you are not valuing and respecting and loving yourself fiercely the way Mother Gaia fiercely loves you. And in that moment, when I heard that child screaming, I realized I wasn't separate from that child. So I have to say this. That's what's been triggering me so deeply, is with all the Wayfair, with all the Amazon, I'm not separate from those children. And I have felt their pain and carried it in my womb my entire life, not knowing what that was, seeing having astral dreams of that, feeling that pain, especially in my moon when I would get my period. I'm on my period right now. It's all related. It's all absolutely related to the womb and to the mother. And I allowed myself to grab that child as an aspect of me, as an aspect of the collective, because none of us are separate, and to take that child in and to love that child. And it shifted something in me. And I watched that child grow from the victim, which was the collective inner child victim, into the collective unconditionally loving child who is the warrior of light, who is that awakening of the inner child of all of us that have been traumatized, in our inner children, because we all have. We are growing up. We also have to be humble and admit that what we're realizing is that we were still completely not mature in that understanding. It was very easy for years and years for light workers to spout on and on and on about unconditional love. Well, guess what, guys? We're here right now. Are we prepared for this? And so the beautiful part is to be able to go through this and to witness it and to humbly see how it is actually meant to cause us to mature, and it's happening. We're all doing it together.
Yes. Yes, Nina.
Yeah, and also at the same time, we speak of unconditional love, and sometimes, you know, like what you said, Nina, it starts with yourself, unconditionally love for yourself. And as part of that process, I've actually been cutting people out of my life.
Me too.
And some people could say, well, how unconditionally loving is that? And for a while I was confused about it. I was like, oh, so maybe I'm not unconditionally loving, until I realized that that is part of the unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
To be really clear about your space and your boundaries, and that any abusive behavior, and you know, that it's okay to, yeah, I get the symbol of this, like a cross, cutting a cross. And yeah, so I just want whoever's watching this to not confuse unconditional love with just going, oh, you're an abuser. But
no, there's a thing in Gestalt therapy called conditional proximity. Like you can be unconditionally loving, but remember, it doesn't happen straight away. There's steps to it. There's a process to it. There's a humbling. There's a recognition. There's a whole process to getting back to that state, like a cleaning that has to happen. So we have to have compassion and understanding with ourselves. We do have to protect ourselves. Our innocence does need protecting. And we can have conditional proximity and say, you know what, right now, I'm in healing, I'm in process, I'm in cleansing, I'm in awakening, I'm in my growing up phase. I'm not yet ready to meet you head on and be able to deal with it, but I can recognize it and I thank you, but I'm going to put my barrier there and goodbye. I can, you know, we can only deal with what we can deal with, and that's love.
Right.
That's kindness, that's compassion, that's real understanding. So I think it's really important I shared that.
Yeah, and also, but I have also seen some people, they just keep on doing the same abusive thing over and over again, and that just doesn't seem to be any process. So at some point it's like, well, I can keep feeding that, I can keep sort of being empathetic to this person, but when I see it's like a complete merry-go-round, there comes a point where it's just like bam, and I shut the door completely.
You say no to abuse. No.
Yeah.
Yes, no to abuse.
Yeah, that's the boundaries. So boundaries have to be established, and it's an inside job. It's always an inside job, and it starts within. And on that note, I think we're almost, no, go ahead.
Tiny little thing. I also want to say, like, I've spoken to a lot of people that have approached me and said, well, what am I adding to the whole thing? Because I don't hear guides, I don't see fairies or whatever. And I just want to say that I'm the same. I'm not at all like I can see things or hang on, I haven't finished yet.
I would second that, Theyre.
It's so subtle, you know, these things. So like when I say, for instance, to Liv, oh my God, you're surrounded by the Kontomble right now. I don't see it like Magenta would see it. Like I just say it because it comes out of my mouth. It's like there's no.
I think
you are.
I think you are. Yeah,
I think so too.
I think you are seeing it the same as me. You just haven't twigged that you are. It's that little bridge between what you're seeing and your awareness and realization of what it is and what it means to see. You know, it's not seen with your actual physical eyes in the same way that we see our physical world, although some people perceive it as that because they're seeing so clearly. I'm fully aware that when I see something, I'm seeing with the pineal gland. I'm not seeing with the actual physical eyes. And I feel that you are doing the same thing, but you're just seeing, you're feeling it as a knowing or something that's just coming to you. But really, when you wake up, it's all the same thing. The knowing, the sight, the clairaudience, all of it. It's all the same thing. It's all just perception.
Tasting.
That's that's the point I was trying to make. Like, don't get hung up on I should be hearing, I should be, you know, like it's all, you know, we all have these different parts of ourselves that activate in different ways. And that's, you know, so we're, that's just, thank
innocence. When we come back to innocence, that absolute innocence, that divine inner child, if you like to call it in that way, that's the inner sense. It has lots of different branches. Like you can taste color and see sounds and, you know, smell objects that don't have whatever, you know, or hear planet. I can hear all kinds of stuff happens, you know. It's all branches of the spectrum of
the spirit.
Of the spirit.
Yeah.
So many branches.
It's like you're with your spirit, and the more you're with your spirit, the more everything just suddenly just falls into place and makes sense in all sorts of ways, in smell, in sight, in everything, you know. It's spiritedness.
Right. And the more we come in here to ourselves, the more conscious we become, and the more activated and awakened all of that becomes, and it all just makes sense.
And that's when it all opens up, right? All of those senses and things start to open up. Just looking at the time, we're at, you know, at 2 hours, so we should probably wrap it up, ladies. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to stop recording now. So thanks everybody for listening. We love you. God bless you. Love yourself first. That's where we begin.